Hang on, let me speak. Let me speak. Hang on, Paul. One of the women I interviewed there, who was an immigrant herself, said she gets on a bus and she can't even understand people on the bus because there's too many different languages being spoken. That's not assimilation.
That right there is the moment the entire debate shifts. Not racism, not prejudice, not fear, assimilation. A migrant herself saying she cannot understand the language spoken around her. That is not a fringe complaint, that is a warning sign. And the reason this clip hits so hard is simple. It exposes the gap between political comfort and public reality.
Got my fantastic panel here with me, geopolitical strategist and SDP foreign affairs spokesman Henry Bolton, former Conservative MP Jane Stevenson and former Labour Party advisor Paul Richards. Let's get cracking. I thought this was fascinating, Henry, because I honestly went there with fully expecting everyone to be offended. And a lot of those people, many of them legal migrants, said, he's right, he never should have apologised. What do you make of that?
On the apology, I think it's up to him. I think what he was doing in that interview was applying a subjective observation, and he sort of termed it what he saw, what he observes, what he sees as colonisation. And I think what he didn't mean to do was be offensive towards anybody. There was a sort of political backlash, not a public backlash so much, a political backlash from certain quarters, saying this was outrageous, and some in the media. And I think he just felt, well, OK, I didn't mean to offend anybody, so he's apologised, hence the choice of language, not what he's observed.
Yes, correct.
And I think then there is the question as, is he right?
Notice the split. Political backlash, not public backlash. That distinction matters.
And I think, actually, I believe he is. And it's not colonisation from the point of view of a foreign nation trying to turn Britain into a colony. But what is undoubtedly happening, as I mentioned earlier in the programme, is sectarianism has come into British politics. Sectarianism has entered British society, and it's based on culture and religion that has been imported from abroad. And we are being expected, largely by English people on the left of politics, to step aside to accommodate those foreign cultures. And that, to my mind, has the same effect as colonisation, even if it's not called colonisation. And when I was a district governor in Kosovo, both the United Nations and NATO termed this precise behaviour and sort of dynamic as cultural displacement.
Interesting. Very
that's
interesting.
That's the term that I've used many times to refer to this. If one culture is being expected to move aside to accommodate, and it is moving aside because you cannot have, for example, both operating in one society, one community, then you've got to move aside.
That's not confusion. That's a direct accusation of cultural surrender.
And the final thing on that, sectarianism is not benign. It is anti-democratic by definition.
Yeah, indeed, it is.
No, I agree.
Jane, I'll come to you on this. A few things to pick up on what they said there. A few of them pointed to British people not wanting to do certain jobs. Yeah. One of the ladies I interviewed said, you don't see English people in warehouses cleaning homes.
Well, I think
is that their fault? Is that English people's fault, or is it the fact that wages have been suppressed, therefore those jobs are not attractive?
I think that's a very London comment, because if you came to Wolverhampton, lots of people are doing very ordinary jobs. So I think that's specific to London, because it's just there's so many foreign people in London now. But I think Jim Ratcliffe's comments, most of what he said, I would agree with. I think the word colonised is so sensitive and evocative of something bigger than he wanted to say.
People think of empire, don't they?
When he got his dates wrong, but since millennium, we have increased the population of this country by 20%.
Yes, it's a lot.
That is a lot. And if you think about infrastructure, housing, roads, everything, it is too many people.
20% in 25 years is not gradual change. That's acceleration.
There is a slow, natural pace of immigration, and I'm from a very multicultural city, Wolverhampton. We've got a big Sikh population, a big West Indian population that have been there for 60, 70 years. And because of the pace, we're slow and measured, no one has an issue. But I do see more racial tension than I have since I was a child, because of the numbers, and people are scared, people are worried, and the public service is being pressed too hard. And of course, the chap who made me laugh when he went, everybody is making a business, everybody's doing this. Sadly, we know that isn't the case.
Well, this is the fascinating thing about Southall. It actually has a far higher rate. I think it's at least double higher benefit claimant count in Southall. It's also, Paul, I'll put this to you, it's only, in some wards, it's between 2 and 3% white British. Now, when Jim Ratcliffe says something like Britain's being colonised because there's too many immigrants, I think Southall might be a good example of what he's talking about. When the British population no longer exists there, the culture disappears. There's actually, one of the things you see as you walk down the Broadway there in Southall is a church that's closed since 2013, and it's very striking. It's just an empty building there. And that's what people will say. They'll go, well, if integration had worked and immigrants had moved to the country, then surely these churches would still be running. You'd see pubs open, and that isn't the case, is it?
And there it is. Attack the man. Avoid the argument.
I mean, there's a lot to unpick there, isn't there? I mean, a lot of the new churches that are opening up are Africans who are coming, evangelical Christians opening up new churches. So there is that shift. I mean, Southall, I think, is the opposite argument, actually, because of the people you interviewed there were going to be second, third generation of people who came from predominantly the...
Well, 60% of the people who... two-thirds are foreign-born, actually, so that's not quite the case.
But a lot of them will be people that came in the
Perhaps.
60s and 70s, came to work here, came to work in the transport system, in the airport, particularly Heathrow, and so on. And they're the ones who are saying, yeah, immigration's going too far. But they're the ones who have assimilated. And so actually they make the argument that you can. On Ratcliffe, I mean, he's a migrant, isn't he? He's migrated off to Monaco to avoid paying his taxes in this country. He's a massive tax dodger. And he's also run United into the ground as well. And do you know, you're saying about Southall having about 60%. Do you know what has 70% migrants? The United squad, that's what. And without them...
You're just proving the point of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, though, right?
No, I'm not. I'm saying
the
that migrants come and do a good
Manchester
job.
United should be a
Nobody
British team full of British players, but it's not because of migrants. I hate that argument because it just reinforces what Sir Jim
We
Ratcliffe
all know
Premiership.
immigrants who are fantastic.
The Premiership would be a disaster without all the foreign players.
Let's bring Henry back in. Go on, Henry.
It's not... this isn't a discussion about whether migrants contribute to society or whether they don't. That's a different different subject. I mean, you know, migrants contribute massively to the economy in Dubai. You know, so but it's got a very different culture. What we're talking about here, and I think what Sir Jim Ratcliffe was referring to, is what I was talking about earlier, which is the fact that the British culture is being displaced by imported cultures.
But it's not, though, is it?
It is.
No,
it is.
When the debate tightens, the tone sharpens, because the stakes are real.
Hang on, let me speak. Hang on, Paul. The one of the women I interviewed there, who was an immigrant herself, said she gets on a bus and she can't even understand people on the bus because there's too many different languages being spoken. That's not assimilation. That isn't integration. Everyone who comes to this country should be using the common tongue and the native tongue of this country, English.
They should.
But this is what.
And the first generation that comes here, whether it's from down the ages, from the Huguenots onwards, uses their own language at home. Then they learn English, and the second generation speaks English.
But why would you need to do that if your entire area around you, the people are vastly one culture, you wouldn't do it, would you?
But they do. In every generation, this is what happens.
But a great many of the the people who've been sort of Islamicised, fundamentalised, radicalised. Thank you very much.
Right.
Radicalised are second generation because they have a confused identity. Their parents were born somewhere else, so they're sort of they've got a strong association with Pakistan or wherever it might be, but they're also living the English life, and they're trying to conflate those two things, which is very, very difficult.
Well, we're talking about language. They speak English,
but speaking English is not a cultural. It's not be end all of culture. What we are seeing is sectarianism, and try and deny this, Paul. We are seeing sectarianism in local government.
This is where cultural tension becomes political tension.
That is not British culture, it's not British way of life, it's not British politics, it's not British administration. We are seeing churches being taken over and other centres such as old cinemas. Yes, it's good that they're used, but we're seeing them used and being used as centres for Islam. The fact of the matter is that cultural areas of cultural identity that are associated with British culture are, to an extent, being taken over by foreign cultures. The idea, for example, mosques in the Lake District. That is, whether you like it or whether you don't, that is an importation of a foreign culture that is largely displacing our own.
All right,
and I think you'll find the majority of people that you talk to in public
Funnily
would
enough,
agree.
I was in Carlisle 2 days ago, and we were talking about the local mosque. It's a tiny mosque serving a very small number of people who happen to be worshipping Islam. Now, that is not displacing anything. It's just people
But
being
some
allowed
are.
freedom of
We
religion.
talked about that earlier.
We are allowed
We
freedom
talked
of
All right,
about
let's
that
not talk
earlier.
over
There
each
are
other because the
Muslim-
audience doesn't like it. All right.
Okay.
Fine. Go on. You haven't said. Give me the
No, I was
final
going to
word,
say
Paul.
the pace. I'm interested if Paul thinks that increasing the population by 20% in 25 years.
It needs managing,
is
of
too
course,
much.
but the British population has always gone up throughout history.
But not by 20% in
Yeah, well,
25 years. That is a
Of course it has.
massive
What
leap.
do you think happened in the mid-century?
Well,
last
Paul,
century?
I
Not
will
that-
say,
not that
I
much.
think this is,
population's always gone up.
unfortunately, I think you're out of touch and out of step with the British public. Even legal migrants think it is too high, and they especially are very angry legal migrants. And I speak to them in Whitechapel, I speak to them in Southall. They tell me they're very angry about illegal migration, particularly the ones who
Yes.
come in through legal routes. But listen, we haven't got time to discuss this much longer, unfortunately, because we've got a great British giveaway to give you. It's £10,000 luxury holiday for two, 30 grand in tax-free cash. Here's Hayley Sparks with all the details.
This wasn't just an interview. This was a collision between lived experience and political messaging. You saw it. You heard it. You felt the discomfort when the word displacement entered the room. Instead of calmly dismantling the argument, the response drifted into deflection, Monaco, football, tax labels. Because confronting the scale of change is harder than mocking the messenger. This is a pattern. Whenever rapid demographic change is questioned, the debate is reframed as intolerance. Whenever assimilation is raised, it becomes accusation. But here's what politicians refuse to confront directly. A country can absorb migration. It cannot absorb fragmentation at speed without consequence. 20% population growth in 25 years changes housing demand, school capacity, NHS pressure, community cohesion. That is arithmetic, not ideology. And this is why trust is gone, because people can see visible change in their neighborhoods. They can feel strain on services. They can sense cultural shifts happening faster than institutions can manage. And when they raise it, they're told it's offensive to even ask. That disconnect creates resentment. Not because people hate migrants, but because they feel unheard. So ask yourself this: is this honest debate or controlled conversation? And if politicians can't even admit the scale of change, can they realistically manage it? If you believe this discussion should happen without censorship, like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell, because this argument isn't going away.